Strap yourselves in and hold on tight. This is the Power Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week it's another episode with a little brother. Last week we had Bob Sovin, who seemed to not like his brother that much, and this week it's the total opposite. Tyler McCaul grew up with a pro biker brother, but they got along and pushed each other. Sure, there was fighting, but at the end of the day, Cam McCaul and Tyler are BFFs, and both of them have their own unique style on a bike. I've met Tyler a few times, and he's always been such a nice guy, so I was stoked to get him on the podcast. Before we get into it, I feel like I have to mention all the wrong that is going on in the world again. The virus, the racism, and really, there's not much more for me to say other than to ask everyone, and I'm not saying that you are the problem, but everyone should remember that when in public, if you aren't wearing a mask and everyone else is, someone is going to have a problem with you. And if you lose your temper because you're being selfish, you will be videoed, it will make it online, and I'm sure in a lot of cases, it really messes with people's lives. So the moral of this rant is wear a fucking mask, even if you are so American that you think you can't get the virus. The other issue that's starting to be all over the news is athletes taking a knee at sporting events. I love the fact that this gets people so riled up. I mean, this has nothing to do with the flag. We are all grateful for the service that everyone has put in to protect our country, and to protect our right to kneel during a song. I mean, a lot of these pissed off people live their lives as God, country, family. While I'm all for people's belief in a higher power, I would never put my country before my family. I mean, really, I pay the country taxes, and I love it a lot, but I love my wife and kid and parents a whole lot more. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say here, but while America is great, it will go further and further into the shitter if we don't look at the past to change our future. And the kneeling? Well, that's drawing attention to all of this, so it's working. I've said it before, and it's not right, but things aren't going to change completely until the older people who grew up thinking racism is okay will die off. But death is not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk bikes with Tyler McCaul. Before we do it, I need to ask you to follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement, ask you to subscribe to the podcast, and rate me wherever you listen to me. That really helps the show grow. I also want to thank my great sponsors who make this thing happen. They are Stanley, the 10 Barrel Brewery, and Peter Glenn's Ski and Sports. That's enough from me. Now let's talk to the mountain biker that Chilli should sponsor, Tyler McCaul. How's the ankle?
It's kind of a piece of shit, but it's getting there. I'm almost at 6 months. Hoping to kick the crutches tomorrow.
Whoa, 6 months on crutches, what'd you do?
I went way too fast on a big drop out in Virgin. Didn't crash, didn't put a foot down. I just landed so hard that it buckled my ankle and folded my toes up towards my shin.
Oh.
Felt like I exploded my leg. I think in a way I kind of did, but I guess it just bruised a lot of the bones in there and created a bunch of kind of micro crush fractures across a lot of the surface, mainly the talus. Stretched the ligaments and everything, and the doctors were really surprised I didn't tear my Achilles, but that was just all inflamed and pretty pissed off, and it took way longer than I could have ever thought it would.
In the world of getting injured, you did it at almost the exact right time, like right when all the shit with the virus is going down?
It's true, yeah. I'm not missing out on any events. For that, I'm super grateful. I'd be having a ton of FOMO watching everyone travel.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole world's on hold, so it is a fairly good time to be locked up in the house and just watching the clock go by.
How much longer do you think you have? You get off of crutches hopefully today. When do you think you'll be able to actually ride and have fun again?
That is a great question. I'm riding the road bike a little bit right now, which I just started about a week ago. I hate riding road bikes, but right now it's super, super fun because I can just get out and do something. But it's definitely going to be a long process right now. I can only do sit down rides. I'm not full 100% weight bearing. So when I say I'm going to be off crutches, I'll be on a cane for a little bit, probably doing physical therapy. And I don't know, hopefully the strength comes back quick and get back to it as quick as I can. But I'll probably be trail bike guy for a little bit, which is cool. There's a lot of good stuff to check out here that I haven't ridden yet in Utah. So yeah, that'll be cool. But could be a long time till I am jumping off cliffs again. Could be a short time. Not really sure.
Well, like we said, timing was perfect with this one. And going into this interview, you had asked me to stay away from asking about your salary and asking anything about death regarding bikes. And I don't blame you for that, because the salary part is always awkward and uncomfortable. And I'll start the interview off with, who are your sponsors today?
I ride for GT Bikes, Fast House Clothing, Marzocchi, Shimano, Maxxis, Deity. Man, you're really putting me on the spot here. 510, Race Face, Bell Helmets. I think I fired them all off there. If I forgot anybody, I'm sorry. I love you. And I'm just bad at being called out. But yeah, those other questions, those are just based off things I heard you ask in other interviews. And yeah, I was just raised to not ask people about how much money they make, whether it's a lot or a little. But yeah, thanks for understanding that. And yeah, the other one was just something that hit close to home, but thanks for understanding. And those are my only two things. We can talk about anything else you want, really.
Yeah, and I was actually raised not to ask about that as well. And then I started doing it when I had a podcast, because how I was raised and what I think people want to hear are two different things, given the people that I interview don't like answering those questions. So I'm not going to ask you about how much you make, but I do want to know about toys, because when you have a great job with amazing sponsors, you have money coming in. Have you been able to buy some cool stuff? Do you have a cool compound in Utah right now?
I do, yeah. I will say I've never killed it financially compared to some of my fellow riders and peers. But my parents did a really good job of teaching me to save from a very young age. They kind of turned me into a little entrepreneur. I'd always sell whatever I could, lemonade, golf balls, whatever. So I've always done okay and put all my money away in the hopes of one day being able to move out to Utah, where things are much more affordable than California. So last year I got to buy my dream house out here, which has been amazing. And then I treated myself to a new dirt bike after Rampage last year. I always said I'll never buy a brand new dirt bike because they seem to lose value as soon as you take it off the lot. But
Yep.
Rampage last year was a tough one. It's just, always a lot of work. And I wanted to reward myself after. And I saved a little bit of money because we get show up money now. And now that I live here, I didn't have to rent a house for me and my dig crew. And then with the prize money I got, I wanted to treat myself. So I priced out a new dirt bike, and it was within $4 or $5 of the money I made last year at Rampage. So bought myself a dirt bike. And when I look at it in the garage, that's my reward for last year's work, which I got 9 hours on my new dirt bike before I hurt myself. So that's been kind of torturous to sit and look at it in the garage, but I'll keep that bike for a long time. And I'm looking forward to riding it when I can.
Well, your parents did a good job. If you kept it within $4 or $5 and you were actually aware of that, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
The other question you asked me to stay away from was the whole death question. And I asked your brother that about 3 years ago. And I'll say when I asked that question, I had only seen Rampage on the internet. I knew about Paul's story, and I know there was a shit ton of risk on the line. What I didn't know how to do back then was interview anyone. And asking that question, while I felt like it was kind of valid, it was handled in a complete wrong way. I've learned a lot since that, and when I think of Rampage now and I think of risk, it's not really death that I think about. Do you ever think about negative outcomes, or if you start thinking about that, is that something that you shouldn't even be at the contest?
That's a tough one because I kind of always have a different approach, and my brother, my friends have always kind of given me shit. If I am picturing a new drop or a new jump, I will rattle off everything that I see going wrong. And they're like, why are you talking like that? What are you doing? That's not how you're supposed to prepare yourself to do something. But that's the way I handle it. And I think that that's my way of knowing what not to do. And once I've run all those scenarios through my head, it helps me to just focus on what there is to do in order to do it right. So everybody has a different approach. Some people don't think about that at all. They just picture it working, and that works for them. But I kind of have somewhat of a doom and gloom approach. I come to terms with that, and then I run the scenarios of it working right. And then, I don't know. I guess it's just my way of avoiding what can happen in the best way possible.
I mean, most people I'm around or anybody I've ever talked to, when you talk about something like lining up a feature, there is no thought about not landing it. That's just what happens. But with you, it sounds like you're looking at all the elements. It's just interesting that you have a different approach, like you said. And I mentioned Paul, and I've interviewed him. That'll come out in a couple weeks.
Cool.
But when he had his injury, How did the riders feel about how the whole thing was handled on the Red Bull end? Not to put any blame on Red Bull because, this is a crazy event and you're learning something every year, but is there a big change that the riders need to see moving into the next year of Rampage?
I'll say that right now we are in a really good place with Red Bull and the organizers, and there's mutual respect between one another. That I always refer to as the bad year. Things were just kind of escalating quickly. The event was getting a lot of recognition. There's a lot of money involved. I don't know if that swayed certain things, but the riders became less of a priority and it became more about the show, which often happens in action sports. And that year, man, they worked us like into the... I ended up in the hospital that year, and I always describe it as I basically dug myself into a grave. We didn't have the schedule in place like we do now, which I'll get to in a second. Practice days were cut short because there was supposed weather coming in. I had to do qualifying that year because I had a broken ankle the year before. So then if you're not top 10 the prior year, you have to do qualifying to get joined up with those guys for finals. So I had a whole line to build. There was no rest day or anything, straight into qualifying. Leading up to qualifying, that year I made a mistake and got a new pair of boots before Rampage, which you don't do. You got to break them in first. And I had the most insane blisters all over my feet. And I would go to my hotel at night, put my feet in an ice bucket. And a couple nights I woke up in the middle of the night with my dinner in my lap and my feet in the ice bucket. Anyways, I was just like working myself like a dog because we had to get everything done in time. We did qualifying. I got third. And then the next day was supposed to be a practice day. And I was going to use that to sleep in, make some final tweaks on my lines, and then use that evening to guinea pig something new. So I had 24 hours, which was still going to be pretty tight timeline to rest my body enough for finals the day after that. And then qualifying ended and they said, look, boys, weather's coming in. Finals are tomorrow. See you tomorrow. We're like, holy cow. It was almost dark, evening. I put my boots back on and said, let's go up the hill. And my diggers are like, what are you doing? And I said, I got to hit that new jump because we don't have tomorrow now. So yeah, trying to guinea pig that, crashed, KO'd myself, was in an ambulance. My good friend Jeff Herb was in an ambulance following me right after. He compound fractured his tib fib. There was just an insane amount of crashes that night. Everyone was trying to cram everything in. So I attribute that to unforeseen schedule changes. And then, yeah, the thing with Paul was just insane. Like, who knows? If he was ready to hit that drop, maybe he would have had some more run-ins the next day. If we had that next day, I don't really know. But, you can't help but think like that. I watched that happen from a hospital bed, and it broke my heart. It was the most insane thing ever to see. So that was the bad year. There was 4 of us in the hospital at the same time, and I said I'll probably never do another Rampage again. I don't feel the respect. I don't think it's worth it. So there's a lot of backlash, both online and from the riders ourselves. And then Red Bull stepped up and said, hey, look, we screwed up super bad. Let's get everybody together and see if there's any way we can fix this. So they flew a grip of us up to Seattle for a meeting, which was super rad. I went into that meeting pretty angry and I came out super happy. They basically said, what can we do to make it better? Give us a list of demands. And then over the course of a few months, we worked over schedule changes and we implemented a mandatory rest day, which I was big on because I think after that much work in the desert, you need to just chill for a day and reset before you're going to ride your bike off, that kind of stuff. And the first 4 days are no riding, just digging, mandatory rest day. And then 4 days digging, you can ride if you want to, and then finals. And then we have a bit of a weather window. So we shoot for Friday. If Friday is looking bad, we have a rider committee, 2 rider representatives that talk to the organizers, talk it over, and decide on the best day. It's just an open line of communication between the organizers, the riders. Everything's been worked through. And that was a long answer, but yeah, that was a crazy year. And I think that there is a lot of misconception of anger towards Red Bull about Rampage in general, but especially that year. But it was smoothed over greatly. They admitted that there were some changes that shouldn't have been done. And now I think we're in a really good place.
Yeah, it sounds like you went from horses to people.
It kind of felt like that, yeah. But yeah, I don't need to dwell on it because they made the necessary changes. So it's good. We're grateful. And we've got a really, really rad group of friends that do that out there in the desert every year, and we want each other to stay safe. And in the end, if we're safe and happy, the event is better and everything is all rainbows. So yeah, it's been good now.
Yeah, and I mean, I can nitpick that 1 year or years past, but you know what? Nobody does events like Red Bull and nobody listens to athletes like them. So it's great that they do what they always do and listen to the athletes when there's an issue and they make it better.
Yeah.
Speaking of injury, when you were a kid growing up in Aptos, California, chasing your brother around the trails, was it constant trips for stitches and casts from the McCaul brothers?
Yeah, I would say so. Trying to think. Lots of stitches for sure. Cam didn't break a ton of bones growing up. I broke a few, and sometimes it would just be, tough it out, see how it feels the next day, wake up the next day and be like, Dad, this thing it's not good. So then we'd go get it checked out, and then Mom would be all mad at Dad for not taking us the day before. But yeah, I think that's normal for any kid that likes to do fun stuff. We weren't into the typical sports. We tried them. We were both pretty into baseball, but yeah, just the bikes and motorcycle type stuff just was where we were constantly gravitated to. And with that comes some injuries, but that's just part of being a kid, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you were pretty much born into two wheels. Your dad was a flat track motorcycle racer. He eventually does 30 years as a firefighter and cabinetry work and a whole bunch of different stuff, but a rad dude that had to hang it up and start working, I guess, when he started a family. And you and Cam, do you guys pretty much get your dad back into motorcycles?
Yeah, you definitely did your research on those facts right there. That was impressive. But yeah, he's definitely one of the coolest dudes I've ever met. I'm super lucky to call him a dad. But yeah, he had an incident when he was racing flat track back in the day that he lost a very close person to him, and he hung his boots up and said he'll never touch another motorcycle again. He doesn't want his kids to get into such a dangerous sport and just wanted to be completely done with it. But then when Cam and I were growing up, we obviously wanted to ride motorcycles, and we kept bugging him about it. He looked back and thought of all the good years and times he had and all the lessons he learned from riding motorcycles. And he said, I don't want my personal reasons to keep my kids from being able to do what I used to love. So he got us some super old dirt bikes. I had a 1986 KX60 that I think it had a soup can for a muffler. I think that might have been just so we could get through the gate at the park. But anyways, yeah, so we started riding again. He took us. He wasn't riding. He would just take us and teach us from the parking lot. And we were having a blast doing it. And then we met up with some of my childhood friends at Hollister Hills, the kind of local park that we used to ride at. And their dad had a big XR 400. And I remember my dad kind of asking about it. I didn't know if he was going to actually ride it or not, but I was riding this one track called the Vintage Track, which used to be one of our favorites. And I heard something behind me in one of the straightaways, and I turned around and it was my dad on the XR 400 doing a big wheelie down the straight. And I was like, what the heck? So yeah, he got back on it and was hooked and got another dirt bike and has been having fun with it ever since. And that was probably over 20 years ago. He's got a CRF 450 now, and he's recently got into racing vintage motorcycles. He's got a couple old Mako motocross bikes, and yeah, he's got his passion back for it, and I'm really glad that happened, and he didn't keep us away from it. But yeah, he's having fun with it now, which is great to see.
Awesome. And then I would think that it's moto on the weekends, and then during the weekdays it's riding bikes, and I think you have a ton of people in the neighborhood that do ride bikes. And is it pretty much you chasing Cam, who's chasing the older guys in the neighborhood?
Pretty much, yeah. I think the way Cam described it, which is like sums it up really well, is we loved riding dirt bikes, but my dad worked a full-time schedule, and he took a lot of overtime shifts to be able to pay for all of our hobbies. So the only time we could go ride motorcycles is when he had the day off and he had the time to take us, the 45-minute drive to ride. But then we realized we could just ride bikes from the house, and it's a similar but different thing. And we had a lot of freedom with that and could go as far as our little legs could take us, or if one of our moms or friends' moms would drop us off somewhere, then we would just do that. And Cam, he excelled kind of right away, kind of freakishly, but we didn't really know it was freakishly at the time. He was just like really, really good for his age and for the area. And we started meeting a lot of kids that were really, really cool, that also were really good at riding bikes. And I was pretty little and young, and I would just follow them around and kind of watch and learn and dig a little bit. And then, yeah, eventually got to the point where I could do the jumps with them. And able to kind of keep up and not dragging them down. And yeah, we grew up at a really, really awesome time and an awesome place. And we had quite the scene back then, which is crazy to think about how many kids there were. Some of them stuck with it. Some of them were as good or better than Cam and I, and, just got into other things. But there's a lot of kids that rode bikes and a lot of kids that were really passionate about it back then. And that was super cool.
And you being the younger one with Cam and all the friends riding bikes, is everybody messing with you a little bit because you're the younger kid, and do you and Cam fight on the side when you're home?
It depends who you ask. Cam might have a different answer, but I remember certain times he doesn't remember, and he remembers certain times that I might not. But yes, we used to fight, but we've gotten to a place now to where we can have a lot of fun riding with each other. But yeah, I remember being at the post office jumps, just trying so hard to fight back to my brother, but I was too little, and he would just do that trick where he puts his palm on your forehead so you can't get him.
Yeah.
And I would just be like going crazy, and it drove me nuts. But eventually we got past that phase, and I was just a little brother, and that's what little brothers are. Those are the cards they're dealt. But yeah, we had a good scene. Everybody got along. There was the typical Grom drama that would happen in any little Grom group, I think. But yeah, it was good times for sure.
And when do you guys start racing?
Man, pretty early on. When I was 9, I got a Specialized FSR Elite. It was 26-inch wheels, way too big for me, but I loved it. They didn't make little micro downhill bikes that are, $5,000 like they do now.
Right.
So I had to start off on the full-size thing, and I was really, really little for my age. I'm still kind of waiting for my growth spurt. I don't know if that's going to come or not. But yeah, my dad took us to that same place, Hollister Hills, where we grew up riding dirt bikes. I did my first race there when I think I was 9, and I loved it. Cam wasn't as into the racing, like the competitive side of it. He liked going and hanging out with everybody and riding the track and looking for jumps to do tricks on. And I like to go fast. I like to try to go faster every time, even when I was really young. So my dad, I think, saw that in me and really liked taking me to races, and Cam loved tagging along, and he would just have fun with it. And in a way, I'm kind of jealous of how much fun he would have. But back then I wasn't super competitive. I didn't let it consume me. I just always wanted to be better. So I'd take the practice seriously and stuff, even though when I was 13. But yeah, I love that. There used to be so many cool races around California that there aren't anymore. Insurance and stuff for those kind of events is tough. And I remember those races, there was always a life flight or two out. Pretty sketchy people coming to ride these courses that are kind of handmade with some sketchy jumps, and people get pretty hurt. But that's just what it was back then. I'm happy that I got to grow up in an era where it was kind of cowboy like that. But then, yeah, just kept racing and loved it. And Cam got a little more into the trick things, which he excelled at like crazy right away. And then eventually I kind of got more into the trick stuff as well, but did the racing thing for a while. And those were some of my favorite times for sure.
Now it's time for me to take a sponsor break. And I love Stanley. They have been around for over 100 years, and they have always stood behind their products because they're the best. I'm not just saying that. I use the water bottles and pint glasses daily, and they really do keep things hotter and colder for longer than the competition. In my opinion, at least an hour longer. Stanley has supported the show for a while, and I want to keep it that way. So I'm asking for your help. What I want you to do is use my code with Stanley to save 30% on the best products on the market. What you need to do is head on over to stanley-pmi.com and go shopping. They have so many products over there, and hopefully I'll have one of everything at some point in my life. But you need to go shopping over there. You enter the code DRINKFAST, that's all one word, at checkout. You're going to get 30% off your Stanley stuff, and it helps the podcast as well. So thank you very much for that. My final sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon, another brand that I love. And I know I said it about Stanley, and I'm saying it about 10 Barrel, and both of those things are true. With 10 Barrel, they support so many different things in ski, snowboard, and bike that when I went to the store before they even sponsored the podcast, I would buy 10 Barrel just because of that. And then when they started sponsoring me, I realized exactly how much they actually do for action sports. They have an A-list team of athletes across ski, snowboard, and bike. They have a big money event series in their Hella Big Air events, and they give back money to the Surfrider Foundation and protect our winners. They do so much, and they have a beer for everyone. I find myself drinking a lot of Profuse Juice, a hazy IPA. Next time you're at the store, I encourage you to pick up a 6-pack of 10 Barrel and support the beer that supports the active mountain lifestyle more than anyone, the 10 Barrel Brewery. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. So when you're starting to race, is this also around the time that your dad takes you to the X Games in '99 and you get to start seeing people do tricks live in person and realize there's a future in that side of the world as well?
That's the same year. Yeah, that was 99. Yeah, that was a crazy year looking back on it. I think that's when I got that Specialized. That's when I did my first race in Hollister. That's when my dad took us to X Games. He also took us to Mammoth for a Norba National. That's when Norba Nationals were huge.
Mm-hmm.
I had never seen anything like that. And I still remember pulling into the parking lot and seeing this, I think it was the end of the downhill course, just came down this super steep, like cinder cone looking thing from the parking lot, and seeing like the Sobe Cannondale rig and just all the team rigs and going around the pits, meeting everybody. And that's when like all the world's best racers would go to the Norba Nationals in the US. So I got to see Cedric Gracia, Steve Pete, all those guys. And I would just, little 9-year-old, go around the pits and with the garbage bag and collect as many stickers as I could. But yeah, that year was probably the year that really like made us so fired up on non-normal sports. Big action sports year for us, I guess.
I mean, you guys were born into the perfect situation where you start with moto and you do a lot of the stuff that regular kids do. There was baseball. I think there was basketball too. The big exception is you two are always breaking bikes. Most kids don't do that. Then you get your first bike at 9. I think Cam gets his at 12. And you happen to live in this place with this dirt jump scene. Can you describe what the post office jumps were and the scene that you grew up in? Because it was different than anybody else, really.
Well, yeah, I think the weird thing is there was a scene before our time, which seemed like it kind of died off as soon as we were getting into it. But our mom would take us to the Aptos post office when she had to drop something off. And across the street, we would see these jumps. They were all overgrown, and I don't think we ever saw anybody riding them. And then eventually when we were old enough and our parents let us ride, the 1.5 miles down the hill to get there, we just cleared out some of the smaller ones and started that way. But there was also a set of jumps across the street from our house, which eventually became a housing development. As soon as I got big enough to clear one of the jumps, the next day we got home from school and there was a tractor bulldozing them. But there was a scene before our time. And I think Cam said he met somebody once a long time ago that said they're the ones that built the post office jumps originally, which we're talking like over 25 years ago. So we grew up with like the remnants of some jumps there, and we would go and just kind of play around. And then we would just meet other kids who would be riding their bikes around the neighborhood and see a field full of dirt and kids riding. They're like, hey, this looks cool. And we met our friends through school and through that, just people randomly showing up. I remember Greg Watts and his brother Andy just riding up one day when we were probably a few years into digging on these things and riding them. And I think word kind of spread around Santa Cruz that there's this spot, and that's kind of how it was back then. Sometimes we would go to this spot by a golf course on the other side of Santa Cruz that there were these insane BMX jumps, which I was never even able to hit before those got plowed. But word would spread when there's a new spot in town and people would gravitate towards it. And that's just kind of how post office was. And then lots of places kept getting torn down and post office somehow stayed for as long as it did. And more people kept coming until it became a pretty worldly recognized place that people would spend their winters from Europe to come ride at. So yeah, it was a crazy time, super cool, and still can't really fathom how lucky we were to just grow up next to that field that just took off from nothing.
Well, you're lucky to have that field, but then you're also lucky to have the parents that you did, because most parents wouldn't have a backyard pool that they'd let you build a drop-in ramp on and let you use it as water ramps to set up your tricks. How do you convince your parents to let you use the pool for your bike?
Mom wasn't happy about that one, but that started because Cam was learning tricks really fast, and he did a lot of the like freestyle moto type old school tricks: no foot cans, pendulums, cliffhangers, heel clickers, Indian air, Superman seat grabs. He had like all of them. So he kind of ran out of new things to do, and he had a steady rate of progression. And then people were starting to do backflips on mountain bikes. And so he told my dad, I'm going to try a backflip. I don't know if he said I'm going to try a backflip tomorrow or where he was going to do it. I think my dad asked him where, and he named some jump. My dad was like, no, you're going to break your neck. You're not going to do that. He's like, well, what am I going to do? So my dad said, I'm going to make you a jump into the pool. So he kind of ghetto engineered this roll in off of our garage. The setup was so sketchy. There used to be a gate that you had to go through that was a little over handlebar width wide. And looking back, I don't know why we didn't just rip the fence out earlier. But yeah, I remember my dad hitting it back then. My dad does not ride bikes, or he does now, Whistler every year, and he's got an e-bike. But back then, he didn't know the mechanics of a bike to keep your pedals level or anything. And we talked him into hitting the pool jump after he built it. And he pedaled all the way down the roll-in, almost clipped his pedals on the crux, like played chicken with the gate on both sides, trying to get through, and then pedaled off the ramp. And I guess his thought process was like a dirt bike. You throttle it out off the lip. But yeah, I have a very vivid memory of that. That was awesome. My mom wasn't happy about that because it was pretty dangerous. The only angle to get at the pool was kind of at a diagonal, and it was really close to the right side of the pool, which we attribute everybody in Aptos. We all spin to the left naturally for the majority of it, and most of us are left foot forward, and that's considered spinning goofy footed. But you didn't want to spin right on that thing because you'd hit the bricks. But Our mom was not happy about it for a while until she started coming out and watching and laughing with us, and she'd make a little cocktail or something and sit at the pool and just watch us and our friends ride in the backyard. And I think she was just happy that we were home and doing stuff with our friends and we were in a safe place. So then she was all about it.
Well, it's amazing you were able to get your parents to do that. Or actually, you didn't even get your parents to do that. It's amazing that your dad was like, I'm doing that. You're not going to learn a backflip on a jump.
Yeah.
By the time Cam's 16, I think sponsorship and stuff's happened for him, or it's starting to happen. He gets an invite to Rampage. You're like 13 years old. The whole family heads down, and you aren't really feeling the Rampage event. Why is that?
I didn't understand it. I'd never seen anything like it. I thought it was super cool. We got there and I was like, holy, this is crazy. And it was a bunch of people I've seen in videos and got to see the rumored Josh Bender, which was obviously awesome.
He's going to be on the podcast in a month.
Oh man, that's going to be a great listen. That dude's got endless years of wisdom. But yeah, got to see him in the flesh. Jordy Lunn, that might have been the first time we met. Good old Jordy. That was back when Greg Menard, I think Steve Pete, a lot of the racing legends used to do Rampage as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a big race fan, so it was really cool to watch them ride the ridges. I thought that was awesome. But then I'd see people try these drops with super soft landings, because back then we didn't know, they didn't know that if you just add a little bit of water and pack it, you're probably going to land a lot better. But it was super, super cowboy back then. And people would just send these things hoping it worked and crash. And it was like a beautiful, scary spectacle. I think I was pretty into it until I saw Cam make that huge mistake and fly off a cliff. And we actually found the tape that I filmed on a little Sony VX2100, a little mini DV tape. I was filming him practice and right off that cliff. In the video, looking back now, is pretty funny. Like my little voice, like super terrified, but it's only funny because he didn't get hurt. But yeah, to me, my brother was the best bike rider I personally knew, and I watched him just completely, what I thought, die, while all these other people are crashing around us. And I'm like, this is just crazy. All these people are getting hurt. I want nothing to do with it. And I thought the desert was kind of a miserable place back then. But yeah, I love it now. I think I was just young and scared and didn't understand it back then.
Okay. So you and Cam are kind of on different trajectories in your career at this point, given you don't consider it a career. You're 13 years old, whatever. But you're still racing, and the whole slopestyle element is starting to blow up, and it's a great way to market the sport. I think Cam's right in the middle of it. For you, is it like you're trying to carve out your own path away from Cam in the downhill world, or is it you're not even thinking that, you're just having fun?
I wasn't really thinking that. The tricks didn't come... I'm not saying they came easy to Cam, but he learned them really, really quick. He had like this real talent for just setting out to learn a trick and learning it right away. And when I would try, I would just lose my mind. It just wouldn't work. I remember trying to learn suicide no-handers. And for months, I could just do a suicide one-hander. My friends are like, just take your other hand off. I'm like, yeah, no shit, I can't. It won't come off. But I felt like when I rode trails or downhill, every time I rode, I got a little bit better, which was exciting to me. I like to get better and go faster. So I get frustrated with tricks when I'd spend, weeks and there'd be no progress. So yeah, it kind of turned into that. And then I did get kind of sick of just being compared to Cam all the time. And, I'd get a free set of gear from Fox, and all the kids around town would say, oh, he's just getting that because he's Cam's little brother, which kind of lit a fire under me to, I don't know. I didn't think of it as a career or anything back then, obviously, but I just wanted to be as good as I could. And going fast was fun. But yeah, then eventually I started spending more time on tricks once a lot of our downhill trails started getting torn down, and started to have fun with it. I always somewhat loved, somewhat hated the process of learning tricks. The process of crashing over and over was terrible, but then I learned to love the feeling once you figured it out. Figured if you rotate your hips a certain direction, then it all comes together. And I would take notes and start writing them down. And I had this little cheat sheet of how to break down tricks. And then once I started doing that, that became exciting to me. And then I started having more fun with tricks once it kind of all started to click.
Okay. I'm going to talk a little more about your and Cam's relationship too, because I interviewed Bob Sovin recently. He's a wakeboarder and he's a younger brother as well. He grew up hating everything about his older brother, from his style to his personality. I asked him, I'm like, oh, what do you think about Phil this? He's like, Phil sucks, man. He's a dick. I wasn't a dick. And it's funny that he said that. So he hated his older brother, and his older brother was, the better contest guy. Bob's more personality. It doesn't matter what Bob was. He hated his older brother. And he looked to separate himself by not focusing on all the things that his brother did. You were doing some stuff with racing, and that might separate you a little bit when you're younger. But it looks like you two are more best friends than polar opposites. Has it always been that way?
Not always. But yeah, first of all, I got to meet Bob a couple of years ago at a Fox thing. He was a super funny dude. But yeah, back in the day, I won't hide the fact that we really didn't get along that good. But we lived together, and if you're brothers and you live together for long enough, there's going to be pet peeves on everybody's side. But now we've gotten to a place where we get along great, and that's all that really matters. We don't get to see each other as much, and they say distance makes the heart grow fonder. When we don't get to ride together for a while, and then we do, it's just super fun. Yeah, I think that's basically it. In short, we were brothers. We fought a shit ton. But now we get along, and we love being able to ride together whenever we can.
Okay. We talked about downhill. It sounds like you get out of downhill not because you're burnt out on it. It's because of access. Like you said, a lot of your trails disappear. Your last big race, Specialized, sends you to Austria. And it sounds like you just don't have it. And it's a direct reflection of not having the area to train properly. Is that why you decide you're going to get out? Or is it just you want to start the slopestyle thing?
It was kind of a mix of a lot of things, and I don't remember a direct turning point other than I was looking for a bike sponsor out of high school, and my mom really wanted me to go to college because Cam didn't, and I wasn't sure if it was really going to work out for me like it did for Cam. He was killing it. He wasn't going to have to get a real job. He could just do what he liked to do, and he was winning contests, and everything was going great. And then, I was at a point where I was like, all right, I got to get a job, go to college, or start getting some sort of funding so that I can travel and see if I can make it. And I got an offer from GT Bikes that had a little bit of salary, a little bit of travel budget, nothing crazy, but it got me to the places I needed to go to, and had a couple kind of successful first years. And I forgot to say, they wanted a free rider, somebody to do contests. So that kind of changed my focus to that. I wasn't necessarily planning on taking that route, but the downhill thing didn't really seem like it was working out for me at that stage. And I just happened to be doing more tricks and having more fun with that and dabbling in a couple contests. And then I got a contract to be kind of contest freeride guy for GT. So I started doing that, and they let me still do some races, which was super fun. And that was 12 years ago. I'm still with GT, and I don't know if they ever took a chance on me, if I would be sitting where I'm sitting right now doing what I love to do, or if I would be working a mundane job that I hate. But yeah, that was kind of it back then. That's what kind of started the contest path for me, I guess.
When you make the switch, do people take you seriously though, or are you looked at as Cam's little brother all over again?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there were times that in contest runs, I felt like I was getting judged against Cam, and I worked really hard to I didn't want to do the tricks that he did because I had to separate myself, because if I learn a trick that he does, he's been doing it for years longer than I have, his are going to be better than mine. So if I do a similar run to his is going to be better. I'm going to get scored worse. So I just kind of tried to differentiate and do different tricks. But there was one time, Red Bull Joyride. Yeah. Have I talked about this before?
No, I was going to ask you about it, so I'd love you to tell the story.
Yeah, so there was, I think they took 12 people to finals or something like that. And that was when it was an open competition. A lot of people could just show up, pay the money, and ride it. And now they only allow 12 of the world's best that have to earn their way throughout the whole year on the tour. But there were a lot of people trying to make it into the top 12. I was doing a couple different things at Crankworks that year. I was doing the downhill race, the slalom race, but I really wanted to make it to finals in the slopestyle. Actually, this was before GT. I was still on a Trek. It was just kind of a hand-me-down frame. But I got 12th in qualifying. And Cam, who I think he had gotten some fourths at that competition years prior, maybe a podium or two. So he was an obvious threat for the podium. He screwed up in both his qualifying runs, so he finished close to last. So he wasn't in finals, which was crazy. I made it to finals. He didn't. I was super bummed for him because I wanted to see him win. I knew I couldn't. I knew he could have, and I thought that would have been really cool. So we saw the results list. I was in 12th, and then the official results list came out. I was in 13th, and Cam was in 12th. So the event promoters saw the value of having Cam in their show, so they kicked me out and put him in, and that was that. And I was always a little bitter about that, but that's the way it shook down. I didn't get to do slopestyle finals that year, and I think Cam ended up doing really well. So looking back, I probably would have gotten 10th, 11th, 12th. It wouldn't have been that remarkable of a result. And I guess that's just the way it unfolded back then. That was a funny moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are kind of moments where it's like, if you say anything, you're not going to complain to the event organizers, or do you?
I think I was too young to know what was happening. And I was just more like, man, that sucks. Screw them. They're lame. But I wasn't going to do anything about it. If something happened like that nowadays, obviously it wouldn't fly. Everything's much more regulated. And they have ways of protecting the top riders and making sure that they get into finals at events like that. But yeah, back then I don't remember. I don't think I did anything. I was just bitter little kid and let it slide and tried to move on from it.
And then in terms of your style and Cam's style, being that you were racing downhill and into that a lot more than Cam, does that affect your style in terms of just hitting things a lot faster and the way that you ride? What's the big differentiator between you and him?
I don't know. I mean, we did a film shoot out here over winter right before I got hurt, which was super fun. And yeah, we hadn't ridden together in a long time. And we've always kind of known we have different styles, but on a shoot like that, where there's a line with a bunch of different features, it was rad because we could break it down in certain ways to where I hate guinea pigging, which if you're not familiar with that term, that means trying a jump for the first time. I hate guinea pigging long jumps, and Cam loves it. He hates guinea pigging big blind drops, and I love it. So we switched off that way. But yeah, he always excels and always has excelled at the big jumps with big tricks, and I'm just more comfortable at speed and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't think he really has a weakness. He can do it all for sure.
Now it's time for my final sponsor break. And Peter Glenn Ski and Sports is having a huge Burton restock event Thursday, August 13th at all Peter Glenn stores and at peterglenn.com. Burton's sold-out step-on boots and bindings are back. And if you're like me, you remember all the subpar step-in binding systems of the 90s. The concepts were amazing, but the products just didn't perform. Fast forward 20 years, and Burton has dialed the system in with a simple locking security system, universal compatibility for any board, and instant connection and release. I can't wait to try mine this winter, and you can get yours starting this Thursday. They will sell out, so head on over to peterglenn.com to find out all about the product and the restock event. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. While you weren't a huge fan of Rampage in the beginning of your career, and it wasn't your career, like we said, you were 13 years old, your first Rampage in 2010, while you've seen the event before, when you get to the venue, you see the terrain you're working with, what's going through your head? Is it excitement, fear, uncertainty? Are you overwhelmed? Or is it a mix of everything? Or are you just ready?
Super overwhelmed. I wasn't sure if I should have been there yet. I still hadn't ridden in Utah. I obviously should have come out early and ridden the terrain a little bit, but I didn't. I just showed up and hoped I would be able to find a line and learn how to ride it and learn how to ride the terrain. Practice started, and back then it was much more you're on your own. I didn't have a dig crew. I remember Robbie Borden and I think Brandon had huge dig crews, and Robbie was out like a month early to build the line. So that kind of stuff, that's why there started being rules. But yeah, I came in, just no plan, no expectations, and felt pretty lost. There were a lot of lines that had already been cut in from the years prior event. So I was going to try to ride, figure out what I could ride. I was super overwhelmed. And then Alex Prochaska from Whistler saw me kind of lost. We were pretty close friends. He was a racer too, and we were both kind of doing slopestyle, and we had similar styles back then. And he told me to grab my bike and stop being a puss and get up the hill. And he trained me into this really big drop that I don't think I even realized we were going off until we were off of it. I was just following him down a ridge, and then there was this big drop, and then I got this instant jolt of adrenaline and was just like super psyched, and then looked up and realized that that drop was from G. Atherton's line the year before, and they called it the triple drop, and I just always thought it was one of the coolest drops. And then I had just hit that thing kind of blindly, and then Alex towed me into a couple other things, and I was pumped and super hooked, and then got super motivated and found a line, dug a line by myself, and yeah, then I was just kind of all in. Like, it just happened really quick. I had my confidence, and I don't know if I would have if he didn't tow me off of those things. But yeah, that first Rampage was super cool. That was the most fun I've ever had riding a bike, I think. And I had tried my hand at racing and slopestyle and different things. And that was the first time I felt like this is what I should be doing, and everything I grew up doing, it all kind of played a small role into this type of riding in a way.
So there's no expectations, and you really don't know what it's going to be like, and then you find out that that terrain is what you were born to ride your whole life. That's what you've been training for?
That's what it kind of felt like. I was intrigued by the danger, but like how good it felt when something you were scared of worked, and then like gaining confidence in looking at something that you might have looked at before and said no way, and then you're at the point where you feel like you can do that. And that was kind of an addicting thing. And after that year, I remember, I think I dreamed about Rampage every night for so long. Like, I was obsessed with it. And then there was no Rampage in 2011, so I had to wait 2 years until my next one.
Yeah, I mean, that first year you end up with 12th, but then you come back in 2012, and there's not that many expectations on your shoulders that year either, I wouldn't think, coming off of a 12th, but you have an amazing day. You get fifth again in 2013, and you're killing it at Rampages. Is this when you start breaking out of Cam's shadow? Like, people are talking about Tyler separately than Cam, and you're not a little brother anymore. You're Tyler McCaul.
I don't know. I tried not to dwell on that too much. I was just doing what I liked to do. But yeah, I mean, in a way, I started feeling like I was earning things on my own. I think I had this like stigma that I put on myself that maybe I was getting recognition and sponsorships because of Cam, whether that was true or not. That's what some of the buzz was. And when you're hearing that stuff being whispered, you start to believe it. But yeah, I mean, it felt good to start getting some sponsorship deals and feeling like I really earned them, which maybe I had already done before. I don't know, but it was just a confidence thing. And once I got that, I was pretty stoked for sure.
So you've done Rampage a few times, and over the next few years, you're doing, I would say, average at a lot of the contests that you're doing other than Rampage. You're 7th, 8th, 9th, you're up in there. And going into 2015, you were going in with 100% focus. You were going to put together full runs with no repeat tricks, no safety grabs. You're a machine. And what do you do differently in the off season to prepare for a big 2015?
I broke my ankle midway through, it was either 2014 or 2015, but I finally left the parents' nest, moved into a house with property a couple miles down the street from my parents' house, and I had it really good. And as I said in the beginning, I saved as much of my money as I could. My friends made fun of me for that, but I was traveling and didn't make a ton of money. So I wanted to save it so that one day I could hopefully buy a place, and then waited for the right rental property to pop up. And there was a piece of property in town with 2 acres. I called Greg Watts, who was a good friend of mine. He already lived with some buddies, and there was lots of parties at that house, which we were all a part of, but I think he was starting to get kind of tired of it. And I knew he would have loved to have jumps in his yard. So anyways, everything kind of came together. I called about this rental house and asked him about the property and was going to kind of hint at if I could make jumps in it. And the guy ended up being a mountain biker, and I think he knew who Cam was. So he asked if I was Cam's little brother. And I said, yeah. And he was like, man, I want somebody to use the property. Like, you guys should build jumps in it. And I was like, holy hell, nobody offers that on a rental property in California with all the liability and everything.
Anywhere.
So that's when my tricks started progressing, and I moved out, went all in. Greg's really good in a tractor. He borrowed his dad's tractor, built jumps. And as you were saying, it's fully true. I was pretty average at slope comps. I would never, have a moment on a feature, but I could never link together a really good run. I had a lot of voids in my book of tricks. So we built that place, and I just started progressing really quick and working on all the tricks I had to work on, and learned a lot from Greg, who was always really successful in competitions. And yeah, that's when tricks started coming together. I was doing pretty good in comps, went to some of the smaller ones and got on the podiums. And then Colorado Freeride Fest, I was on a really good one and then broke my ankle leg, and that set me back really far. And that was super frustrating because I put so much work into these tricks. I had flip whips both ways, double whips both ways, kind of everything I needed to have to feel like I could ride to my potential. And then I've never been one to, if I don't do a trick for a while, I lose it. Like, my brother blows my mind all the time. I watched a video of him the other day do a 360 opposite tail whip, which he hasn't done probably in years, but he just doesn't lose tricks. But I'm kind of the opposite, and I have to always be practicing. And I had to take 6 months off, and I was devastated. And then starting to ride again, my ankle still hurt. I wasn't riding to my potential. And then I went to Rotorua, Crankworks Rotorua. Ankle was killing me, rode like shit, and was just frustrated. Didn't feel like I could get back to where I wanted to be. And I wasn't really having fun doing it. That whole training process of living in that yard and doing tricks, it was a lot of fun, but I was getting kind of burnt out on it. I really like being able to ride different bikes and do different things. And I was just so focused that I was only on my slopestyle bike, only practicing. I'd have a checklist every day when I woke up. If I didn't meet that checklist of tricks, I'd go to bed angry. So anyways, Crankworks Rotorua, after my injury, I rode terrible. My heart wasn't in slopestyle anymore. And I decided during that trip that when I got home, I was going to load the truck up, come to Utah, and just ride my downhill bike, because that's just kind of what I felt like I wanted to do. Yeah, then I kind of slowly got out of slopestyle comps. I can't remember where the question was. I kind of ran with that one, but
oh, it's all good.
That's when I got more into the downhill bike stuff, I think. And then Rampage that next year, I was really, really going for the win, and then ended up getting hurt, which was a minor setback, but it happens.
Injuries do happen, and I want to bring up one other injury in your career because it is so gnarly, and it is so not what you're known for, but I saw a picture of your leg after a stand-up paddleboarding injury, and that's a sport you take up if you don't want to get hurt. And then the image that you put on social media was so disgusting. What happened?
That's a sport you take up if you want every single one of your friends to make fun of you. And I got made fun of a lot for stand-up paddleboarding, but I didn't really care. I broke my back in 2010, I think. And so my back's pretty locked out, and being on a surfboard in a normal position, cranking my head up, it just didn't really work. And I hated putting a wetsuit on. So I started secretly stand-up paddleboarding and trying to hide it from all my surf friends until they found out. But anyways, yeah, I lived on the south side of Santa Cruz with my now fiance. It was actually right after Rampage one year. And anytime you survive that, you're like so pumped that you have your off season, you're healthy.
You're like, let's go stand up paddleboarding.
I got home and it was like this weird Indian summer weather where it was late October and it was 85, 90 degrees. And we lived right by the beach. So I was like, oh, I'm going to go get one last sup session in before winter. And the waves were too big to be supping. And it was kind of close out shore break, but I'm an idiot. And so I was trying to surf one and it was super fun. And then it started closing out. So I tried to pull out up top and the wave closed out, flipped the board over, and I tried to jump over the wave.
Okay.
But the board had kind of flipped horizontally upside down. And when I jumped over the wave, my leg snagged one of the fins. And yeah, that was the result of it. Is I don't know how many stitches, but it filleted the hell out of my leg and was probably one of the worst flesh wounds I've had out of anything. And yeah, I did it stand-up paddleboarding.
Yeah, it is pretty gnarly. When you post horrific stuff like that, do you get unfollowed by a lot of people on social media?
At the time, I thought of posting that or not, and I didn't want to offend people. Some people hate seeing that stuff, and then I just said, screw it. I'll put a little disclaimer up. I think it's pretty funny. And I put it up, and that ended up being one of my most liked and most commented things ever. You never know with social media. People are freaks. People are weird. They like weird things.
Do you pay close attention to your social media metrics, like the amount of people that follow you and the people that like what you put up and what does well and what doesn't?
Yeah. I mean, you probably should, but at a certain point, you never know what's going to do what, and you can't obsess over it. Sometimes I'll have a riding picture that I worked super hard for and I'm really pumped on, and you throw it up and it gets like the bare minimum of likes.
Yeah.
And then you throw up a picture that you think is complete garbage and it goes crazy. So I don't know. I just put whatever up I feel like putting up, and if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. But yeah, it just kind of is what it is, I think.
Well, I'll say the coolest non-riding social media thing I've seen from you is the Chili's post from the other day. Your signature thing is naming Rampage drops off of Chili's margaritas or appetizers or something from the Chili's menu. And do they just find that out through social media and send you a big box?
Yeah, pretty much. I love Chili's, and I just kind of started running with it. But all my friends would joke about how much I love Chili's. And when Andre Lacondagui or Martin Soderstrom would come to town for winter, they would laugh at me. And Greg really loved Chili's. And so we'd always meet up after the session at Chili's, and it just became this thing. And people knew us for the like weird Chili's fans. And then, yeah, started naming drops after it, and everyone started joking. Because when they'd say it on the webcast, it was like, dang, that was some good advertising for them, and you're not even getting paid. You should get a Chili's helmet. I'm like, yeah, right. That'll never happen. I wouldn't know who to contact, and they probably wouldn't be into it. And then lots of years went by, and I never pursued it. And all these people are like, I'm going to try to get a contact for Chili's and get you a sponsorship. You deserve free Chili's. I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's not going to happen. It would be awesome. And then I just started posting some throwbacks because since I'm hurt, it's kind of all I can do. And started a Chili's Rampage drops hashtag, posted something to my story, and they liked it. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. And then the Chili's Instagram commented on it, and I was like, whoa, that's really cool. And I screen capped it and sent it to all my friends, and it was like, this is like a monumental moment. Chili's is talking to me. This is super rad. And then they asked if they could send a care package. They were stoked on the support and love I give them for being #1 Chili's fan. So they sent me a super cool gift pack. And yeah, I've been talking to them a little bit. They're actually really, really cool and super down for weird ideas. And I have a lot of those. And the dream would be getting a Chili's helmet one day, but I don't know if that's attainable. I think it would be awesome because I love Chili's.
Dude, they need to think out of the box in their marketing. There's no restaurant that's come into this world, I don't feel like, and it's totally organic and authentic. It would be amazing. And yeah, you can name more tricks after Chili stuff, and you should never have to pay for food again. We've been going for a little while. One thing I haven't talked about is video projects. And between Back in the Saddle Again in 2005 to Freeride Entertainment to Anthill, there have been a ton of video projects. And I would think it's less pressure compared to a contest. But have you ever been on a film trip where you just aren't getting your tricks and the pressure starts mounting?
Yeah, for sure. When you're like on a desert shoot, and that's part of the reason I moved out here, is the weather can do whatever it wants whenever it wants. The weather can be calling for super good weather, and then all of a sudden a dust storm comes in and you're hosed. So film trips on a timeline out here are super difficult and frustrating when you go home feeling like you could have done more. And that was part of the concept of moving out here, is to be able to have the time to film things right and do them the way that I want to do them.
And your most recent film project is with TGR. I think it's Accomplice. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I've seen the teaser. I haven't seen the whole thing yet. I think you're touring it right now, or it's being shown right now. But you get to film a section with your brother in Utah. When was the last time you were able to actually ride with Cam for a long period of time?
I can't even think. Yeah, I don't know when that would have been. We used to get to do a lot of shoots for Fox Clothing back in the day when we both rode for them. When Mike Redding was our boss, he would line up all these really cool shoots that were super fun. So we got to ride together a lot doing that. I can't think of a time that we had done a shoot together within the last, maybe 5 years. It's been a while for sure.
And when you film with TGR, like my podcast, they're known more for snow than they are for bikes, so they do a lot of everything. And is there a different vibe working with the TGR crew than some of the other crews in mountain biking?
Well, this one, I guess, was kind of unique because we had Jeremy Grant as the director, who has produced a lot of the Freeride Entertainment films.
Yep.
And Aaron Whitley, who I've done a lot of really, really fun, super memorable trips for Freeride Entertainment with. He was also directing this film and one of the filmers. So we had those guys. So it was like familiar faces. We all get along really well and have a ton of great stories. And then the people I hadn't met before from the TGR side of things were super, super cool people, super down to hustle, work, really good at what they do, fun people to hang around. And yeah, it didn't feel foreign working with them for sure. It was a really, really good time.
I think you can get that on iTunes now. I don't know. I just saw TGR posting some tour stops, which I hope no one goes to because no one should be going to public events right now. But that's me.
Well, it's a drive-in movie theater tour.
Oh, then everybody should go.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool. And maybe a lot of people will go because you can't go to a normal movie theater and people are bored. But yeah, they have this pop-up movie screen, drive-in theater system. So you pull your car up with your family or friends and watch it from a safe distance. So it's kind of cool. And then I think it'll be available on iTunes in August.
And if you haven't been to a drive-in movie before, and I don't think I have, but if you bring a girl or you bring your partner, girl, guy, it doesn't really matter, and you're at the drive-in, it should be a layup. You might be able to do it in the car, so it should be great for everyone. Or you can just watch the bike movie, but that's my opinion. So you're now living in Utah, and is the goal, if you have one goal left in mountain biking, is it to get on that podium at Rampage?
It would be great for sure, but I'm trying to not dwell on it. But yeah, it would be awesome. It's obviously the goal going into it. You want to do as well as you can, but I try not to let myself get too consumed with competition because I've done that in the past and it ruins it. And it's an event I love doing. I want to do it for as long as I feel like I should be doing it. So I don't want to ruin it with setting these super high expectations, which I may or may not meet. If it happens, awesome. If not, I'll try again next year. But yeah, it would be great for sure.
You've been 2 spots off the podium, so you're very close. You live in Utah now. You can train in that terrain, so things are more in your favor. But with that event, you really never know. Every year, everything is different. When all is said and done bike-wise, will you keep a foot in the industry, or do you see a future for yourself outside of the bike world?
That's always the question of what are you going to do when it's over? And I don't know, this might be super naive, but right now I can't see it being completely over. I see being tied to the industry in some way, and I want to ride a bike as long as I can. I love riding bikes, and that's one of my biggest goals, is to stay healthy so that I can do that. But I work with some really great companies that I've had a lot of the same sponsors for a lot of years, and I've gotten really close to those companies, and maybe I'll, start a role working with one of them or start my own brand. I've got a couple things I'm working on now that I'm hoping to bring to market one day that should be pretty cool, that are kind of bike industry oriented. But as long as I'm doing something that gives me the freedom to get out in the desert and ride my bike and my dirt bike and play, that's what I'll be doing. And the bike industry is pretty good for outlets of doing that. So I think I'll stay in it in one way or another for sure.
Cool. Well, at this point in the podcast, I have something I like to call inappropriate questions.
Oh, my favorite part.
Good. So you kind of know how it works. And it's no surprise that I went to your older brother, Cam, and I got him to ask the inappropriate questions. So I'm just going to jump in and let Cam fire away question number 1 for you right now.
I knew this was coming.
I'm in the midst of a dog walk, and it's great.
Oh, this guy.
So I'll get right to it. Here's my question. Be it not that inappropriate, but it's what I got for you, okay? Tyler, what is a cactopus, and do they have them in Utah?
Oh, man, that's a good one.
I've never heard of one.
I think that comes from, if my memory is correct, when I was young, I had a funny pronunciation of a few words, and my parents and my brother didn't tell me because they thought it was funny. So I don't know how old I was, but I was still calling cacti. I was calling them cactopus. So yes, there's plenty of cactopuses out here. I'm looking at cactopuses out the window right now.
That is amazing. All right. We will go with question number 2.
Hi, Tyler. It's me. Again.
He loves this.
I got one more question for you, and here it comes. Why won't you be in my video logs?
Oh, that's a good question. Not a fan of vlogs, man. I don't know what it is about them. Cam was born for them. Sometimes you watch vlogs and it's very clear that the people are doing it just because people are successful at vlogging and they want to be too, so they feel like they should.
It's like podcasting. Everybody should have one.
Yeah, and everybody's trying right now, and it's working for some people, and it's not for others. But Cam was born for vlogging. He loves having a camera in his face. He loves being goofy, and I don't as much. I don't know. I just don't like it. And anytime we're hanging out now, he puts that dumb camera right in my face, and he has this stupid little grin on his face because he knows how much I hate it. And I've heard he has a compilation him and his editor, Taylor Sage, have been putting together of me just angrily telling them I don't do vlogs.
Okay. So Cam's final inappropriate question did not come through. He did not send a third question, but one thing
Thank God.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank God. But now I'm going to ask you, and I'll keep it loose too, but you've named a lot of tricks after margaritas. I would think you like to drink them, and you've probably drank a lot of them over your life. But in terms of traveling and partying with your crew of people that you travel and party with, what is the craziest night that you can remember having?
Oh, man.
The one standout, I'm sure there's hundreds of nights you could think of.
I'm trying to think. We used to get pretty loose, especially when we were in Europe for some reason, which I look back on now and it was very inappropriate and immature. But we just felt like we were in this like playland where we could do anything and no one ever got arrested for some reason. And we would have fireworks and we'd just have a good old time.
Like trashing hotel room kind of stuff?
No, I don't know if I was partaking, but stuff was happening for sure. But we were young and irresponsible and just being jackasses. But it was a good time. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But yeah, nothing's like standing out. We had a lot of good times for sure. We had a really awesome group of friends that we only got to see when we were traveling together. So when we did, and when the contest was over and we could let loose a little bit, we did. And it was fun.
Cool, man. Well, that is pretty much the podcast. And when I look at your career, you're a personality in the sport. You're always putting out content and you have style. You go huge and you get it. There are all those things. But the one thing I look at is that you always had to prove yourself over and over. It was like you were a little kid at the post office jumps and you had to prove yourself just to be a peer with Cam and his older friends. And then you have to go prove yourself in the downhill world. Then you have to come back to the slopestyle world, prove yourself there. Then you have to prove yourself in the Rampage world. And you've been able to do it everywhere. And where it was like Cam's world in the beginning of your career, it is just as equal Tyler and Cam. I mean, it doesn't look like older brother. You guys are peers now. So it's been pretty cool to see. And I want to thank you for your time and heal up, man.
Thank you. I appreciate all that. And that's been great chatting with you.
So that was time with Tyler McCaul, and he's living an incredible life, and a ton of credit needs to go out to his parents. Yeah, all of our parents deserve credit for the fine people that we have become, but the fact that his parents let him transform the family pool into a water ramp setup is crazy. And while that is not going to make you go pro alone, it creates the opportunity to learn rotations, air awareness with a bike, all that stuff in an environment with much less risk than out in the wild. So you have that combined with work ethic and separating himself from his brother without really trying, mix that in with natural and developed talent, and then throw in a cool personality on top of it all, and you have Tyler McCaul. It's no surprise that he is where he is today. And everyone should go on Chilli's social media and suggest they sponsor Tyler. That's the show for this week. I want to thank you for listening. If you have any feedback for me, my email is mike@thepowellmovement.com, and I will get back to you. Finally, I want to thank my sponsors, Stanley, Peter Glenn Ski and Sport, and the 10 Barrel Brewery for making this thing happen. Have a great week, everyone.